Welcome to Let's Get Started. Today we are going to take a look at this Warhammer 40,000 Tyranids and Ripper Swarm paints, and we're just going to get started. So if you're interested in getting into the hobby, this is probably a good place to start, and all you'll need is the box, some snips and some glue. The box itself comes with paints, and I believe there is a paintbrush in here. We're about to find out. Overall, this is about £20 for this box, 10 for the snips, and 5 for the glue. So you're looking at £35 to start, which is a small investment, and it's a good way to test if you're actually interested in doing the hobby. So let's get to opening. Now, one thing I notice about a lot of YouTube videos, especially from experienced painters, is that they always look great. They always look fantastic. But when you're starting, there's almost a self-expectation that yours will turn out just as great. So what are we going to do? Well, we are going to actually paint a model incredibly terribly using just what is included in the box. We'll use the snips to break it off, glue to build it, and then we're only going to use these paints. And we'll try and replicate the colour scheme where possible, but there'll be no priming, no thinning. This is just a, hey, let's get started, let's jump into this thing. Okay, so paint-wise, we have Thunderhawk Blue. It's not a bad size. We have Nagroth Knight. We have Armageddon Dust. A Cortex White. A Magos Purple, and a Wraithbone. And here are our models, which we will only do one at a time. And here is our paintbrush. So let's pop this over here, and let's take another look at the brush itself. Bit of a firm tip. What we are needing, however, is some water. So let me go get that, and I will be right back. Okay, so we have our water, and we also have a tissue to wipe off our brush. These are just going to go to the side for the time being, and we will come back to the painting in just a little bit. So let's build up for now. So like I say, we're just going to do one model. And we are going to do, oh gosh, where should we start? Well, let's just start. Let's take this one here. Okay, and we're going to snip just as close to the model as we can. Now, as you get better or get more involved in the hobby, you may want to invest in a hobby knife to sort of thin down some mold lines or these little clip parts. There we go. So where you've got sort of things like this just here where it sort of snags out a little bit, a hobby knife will take that off. But we're just going to use our snips and sort of bring them down a little bit. We don't really care too much, just have a nice little smooth surface where we can, but again, we're not too fussed. Okay, so that's that piece, and then we are looking for a leg, and we shall go with this piece here. And when you're using the snips, try and use the flat part to get as close to the model as possible. And you want something that's got a nice, sort of a longer stem, snippy part, whatever you want to call it. So there's our second piece, and we're going to just tidy that up a little bit. Okay, don't worry, it doesn't have to be too neat about anything. Just gets it nice and sorted for us. Okay, we're just going to give it a little dry fit, see if it all pops together. If not, we'll get another piece. Oh, looks like I've made a small mistake here. This one's got a tail as well. Okay, we'll pop that to the side, and we'll just grab another piece. You know, making mistakes is all part of the game. If you make a mistake, don't worry. These things happen, so we'll just take this piece here, and dun 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 dun. Must come from under here. There we go. We'll move you to the side as well, and just tidy this up. Well, this is what this is all about. If you ever thought about getting into the hobby, but you weren't sure, and you're a bit overwhelmed by all these top tier artists and like the ones that look really great and professional, you know, because to be honest, that's a bit of a barrier when it comes to actually wanting to do the hobby. You know, you see all these great models, and it just seems to work for those people, and they've been doing that for a very long time. So that's their job really. Whereas just getting into it, it's kind of hard at times. Now let's just see if this push fits. It should do. If it doesn't, we will try another piece. Okay, there we go. So that's a nice little push fit there. So I'm going to look to glue that in place as well. So I'm just going to pop that down, and then we're just going to get these arms, so we know what we are going to glue on to him. Now, do we want this piece? So we're going to go for this piece here. And there we go, that's one. And then we need the other side, so another arm. It looks like there's a little hole that it just fits into, and also an extra sort of arm here. So we're going to go for these pieces just here, and hopefully these all fit in nice and neatly. And here we go, there we go. Oh, there it is. Okay, so let's just check to make sure all this stuff sort of fits in for us. So I've got a nice little push fit, which is great. Just make sure, does that fit? It does require a bit of pressure, but that's all right. Doesn't matter if we break it either. These are just our first attempts. And let's see here. So we've got this little push fit piece, and this onto here. Now that's interesting. So you've kind of got to be a little bit rough with it to force it into place, and then you can see it just sort of slots in. Okay, so that's it all sort of fit into place. I don't need any sort of glue to hold it in place. It's actually pretty sturdy in itself. I mean, I could drop it and seems to survive all right. So what we're going to do is just stick this to a base. Now we've got this little foothold here, with this little hexagonal foothold just here. And let's see if this is a push fit. Don't worry about me making a fool of myself. This is all part of the plan, folks. So that way you don't have to. Okay, again, that's also push fit. But if you'd like to make it a bit more secure, you can add a little bit of glue to the bottom of it. I'm just going to leave it as is because it's actually fairly sturdy in its own right. Okay, so there's our model, and what we're going to do next is we're going to paint it. Now, getting into painting for the first time, we're not going to base coat it, we're not going to do anything fancy with it. It's just going to be painted, you know, like the box art, or as best as we can. Okay, we're just going to take paint from here, put it on here. It's going to look terrible, but that's all right. So another look at the box art. So it seems to be that the three biggest colours that we really want to use are the Wraith Bone for the majority of it, and the Nagaroth Knight for all these sort of armor pieces, and the Thunderhawk Blue for the feet and a little bit on the weapon. Now let's just start there. So let's just start with the white. So Cortex white. No, we want Wraithbone. I just said that. So we're going to have to shake it up. As you can see, in some of these, the paint will separate ever so slightly, but that's all right. You just give them a shake, and they seem to come to life. Okay, now just give it a nice good old shake, and we are going to use our brush. Now we're going to wet the brush first. Okay, gonna run it under there, and then just dab it off on our tissue. This isn't a too bad brush actually. It's you know, standard easy brush. For a starter brush, it seems alright. Let's pop the top. There we go. That's our Wraithbone, and all we're going to do from here. So what I like to do is give it an extra shake and try and get the paint to sit just up here, so that way I can take my brush, if I had it the right way around, and just dab off the top. Okay, so here we go, and we are going to just go for it. The biggest part, or fear for most, is just going for it. So remember, it doesn't matter if you make any mistakes. That's what this is all about. Okay, it's going to look bad, but you know what? It's just an introduction to the hobby. It doesn't matter what it looks like at the end of the day. We can always fix it later on if it's something that interests you. And I said earlier that we weren't going to thin down our paints. Okay, and as we progress through this channel, we'll learn a bit more about what I mean by thinning down paints, and some colour theory, and just general painting and what it is, you know, what works, what doesn't work. But right now, it's our first attempt, and we are doing whatever we want just to make things nice and easy for us. Now, that looks absolutely god-awful. But you know what? We don't care. We're just going to keep going until it looks absolutely terrible. I'm sure there's some professional painters who are checking out this video who are trying to hold back as much vomit as possible just because this is what we are doing. So there we go. But that being said, we all start somewhere. And this is how you usually started with model painting. You know, before you learn anything about it, you just go for it. And you realise, you know, how bad it is, and you begin to research and look up things, and then you'll learn more and more. You know, like base coating, washes, that sort of thing, contrast paint. I still don't understand the difference between washes and contrast paints fully. In fact, they all seem very much the same thing to me. But you know what? It's going to be a learning journey. And hey, don't worry about failing, okay? FAIL stands for first attempt in learning. Now hopefully you can see me paint this okay. I'm not blocking too much of the view. So let's get this and this. Now hopefully if you wanted to paint along with me, you're doing so already, which in that case, great, fantastic, absolutely love it. If not, don't worry, I'm sure you'll join in eventually. Or maybe you just come here to sort of ridicule me a little bit, and that's alright, because doing something bad so everyone can learn is perfectly acceptable. And what you'll see as well is that the paint actually dries fairly quickly. You know, we've just put this on maybe a few minutes ago and it's already started to dry, so you probably need like maybe 1 or 2 coats. And what we'll do with the other model is we'll introduce a few little extra techniques as we go, and we can compare the difference. So let's say we were going to thin down our paints. We'll look at what it looks like with thinned down paints. Maybe we'll look at what it looks like base coated. Who knows? We'll just have fun. We'll just experiment. You know, that's all about art, isn't it? You know, you have a bit of fun. You experiment with what you like, what you think might work. Whether it does or not doesn't really matter. It's all subjective. There we go. Okay. Now we could just sort of breeze over the sort of undersides and not really bother with it too much, because you know no one really looks at the undersides. If anything, it's more for the professional painting that you check out the whole model. Now the whole thing with model painting as well is there's 2 aspects to it. You've got tabletop wargaming, which you'll paint your models for, and then there's the playing of it, and it all comes down to what you really want from your experience. You know, most people get into things like Warhammer to start playing it, and painting is just a byproduct of it. So really not a lot of effort needs to go into it. You just need to have it looking painted, like it can go on the table. And let's face it, no one really cares when you're playing on the table what it looks like. You know, as long as you can identify the differences, that's all that really matters, isn't it? There we go. So, almost done with this Wraithbone. Now I'm just sort of going at it. I'm not really too fussed about it spilling over anywhere, or just getting in the way. And the brush isn't too bad actually. Now what you may have noticed, I haven't actually dipped or washed the brush at all since I've started painting. You should really give a few dips here and there, but you know what, I don't really care. I'm here to make mistakes, and so you can see what sort of happens with everything. Okay, this gun is also this colour. You know, it's all about experimentation. You know, you may not even like this. You may feel like, oh well, this isn't for me. I don't really want to get involved in this. And you know what, that's alright. All you've done is had a small investment of £25, £35, and you've been able to decide that it's not for you, and that's what matters. Okay, because no one wants to invest hundreds and hundreds of pounds or dollars or euros or whatever your currency is into something that you're not going to enjoy. And maybe the whole Warhammer 40k concept, 40,000, isn't your cup of tea. You know, you might want something a bit more historical, or something a bit more fantasy, like easy fantasy as opposed to sci-fi fantasy, so Lord of the Rings. SPQR is more historical, you know, just something like that. Okay, so there we go. We have the Wraithbone all put down in some fashion or another, and as you can see, the brush is starting to just splay a little bit, but that's all right. So all we're going to pop it down. Going to rinse off our brush a little bit and give it a quick dry. There you go, and the brush doesn't look too bad. Now they always say you want to avoid getting a bit of paint by the ferrule of the brush, but you know, it's a cheap brush, it doesn't matter. Okay, the good thing with a cheap brush is that even if you ruin it, you can still use it. So for when we look at dry brushing techniques, that sort of thing. Okay, so that's the Wraithbone. We're going to pop that to the side. Next, we're going to take a look at the Nagarath Knight, and that's this one here. So this is our Nagarath Knight. Again, I'm going to give it a nice little shake just to mix that paint up. And just in case you're wondering, these are 12 milliliter bottles of Citadel paint, which isn't too bad actually. Some of them come in like 3mm bottles, but this one specifically comes with 12 milliliters, millimeters, and that's all right. In fact, you could probably use these for other things besides Warhammer. Let me just get that like that. There you go, and then let's pop you to the side. Get the right end. That's the problem with this being black on both ends. You can get a bit confused. Now that's a very dark purple. So let's take a look at what happens when we put it on our model. Okay, so interesting. This also seems to be a little bit thinner than the Wraithbone as well. So maybe we need to just, you know, thicken it up. So use a bit more. There you go, put it on there. Nice and thick, and you know, you can be a little bit cautious around the lines if you wish. You don't have to. We're just trying to do something that's a little bit of fun. Now, there's so many types of painting. You can do this with the acrylic paints, the speed paints. It's whatever kind of suits yourself, really. I mean, I don't know about you, but I only get a few hours a week to myself to be able to indulge in my hobby a little bit, and I don't want to be spending hours upon hours making something or painting something that, quite frankly, I'm not going to sit there and appreciate. I mean, I'll have a passion project or two here and there, and you know, it usually take me a few months to put it together, and even then it's still terrible, but you know what, it's my effort, and that's what really counts. So don't worry for yourselves, okay? So it's your effort that gets put in. And remember, we're just starting, okay? Let's get started. That's what this show's all about. Channel, whatever you want to call it. Chat. We're just getting started. Oh, there you go. See, I just made a little mistake there. But, you know, it's fine. It works. So you gotta maybe be careful with your brush strokes a little bit, or slow down. Entirely up to you. So I've got a bit much there. Scrape it off. There we go. Now let's. One thing you'll also see on like the more fancier styles, or as this sort of painting progresses, maybe you progress with me as we go through this. You know, they'll get stands to hold the model on so they can sort of, you know, like move it around and such, and that's all fine and dandy, but I've never really found a need for it at the moment, so I just use my hand to hold things, and hey, if it needs to dry a little bit, then it can dry a little bit. There we go, so get just a bit more. Now what's interesting is if we run the brush this way, we can see that it leaves some gaps. So when we look at dry brushing or highlighting, we'll keep that in mind, because it means we can just catch the edges a little bit. So if I was to like do that, so you can see like I won't get sort of shadowy parts here. So when we look at maybe colour mixing and brightening things up a bit, that's something that we'll keep in mind, maybe on the next model. But for right now, this is all about just getting the paint on the model. And don't worry about if you make mistakes, okay? I've got shaky hands, and as you see, I'm making a few mistakes here and there, but that's alright. Okay. So let's pop it here on his thigh. I hope you can see this all okay. I hope you're not obscured by anything. You know, it's just a one-angled camera. I'm actually just using my phone for this. So, you know, do what works for you. That's the real takeaway from this. Oh, I've missed off a whole load of the thing for the gun. Well, that's right, we'll catch that in a minute. And we can just scooch in under here and get that, and just there as well. There you go. So I don't know if you can see that very well or not, but we've just painted the inside of the leg for the armour on the top. Okay, so let's just rinse off our brush. I think that's everything for that. Yep, that appears to be it. And we'll rinse off our brush and we'll dry it, and we'll just come back and pick up those little bits that we missed. So again, give the paint a little shake, and it was just this side here that we missed, so we're going to grab a little bit and we are just going to paint that on like that. Okay, nice and easy. Doesn't matter if it's a bit of a rush job or a quick job. You know, we just want to get paint on the model. And like I said at the start, you know, this is the biggest fear that seems to stop people coming into miniature painting or just painting or anything really, is that there's so much content out there where things look fantastic. And I think we need to remember that, you know, a lot of people who put out content that looks great, they've been practicing for a very long time. You know, no one is naturally good at this. No one knows everything to start with. So when you're starting out, please don't feel like you're never good enough, because you are just starting, and that's all right. There we go, just pop that off over there. There you go. And you're probably wondering why I just put that over there. So it was just quite a lot of paint on my brush, to be honest, and just sort of giving some things a bit of a second coat, just see how it looks. Because, you know, it's alright if it looks terrible. We don't really mind, do we? Okay. Now we'll just do this again. Now this is why thinning your paints, we'll talk about a bit more about it later as well, but thinning your paints helps because it helps the paint to glide and flow just a little bit to get into the crevices, so you don't actually lose any of that sort of detail that we're kind of hiding at the moment. And all I'm doing here is I'm just picking up whatever leftover paint I can, so a bit of residue, just sort of digging it into the model and then taking it over to the other side and again putting it over there. So somewhere between wet and dry brushing, and you can see that, you know, I'm making mistakes, but you know, well, these things happen. So all we'll do is close that up, give it a rinse, give it dry, and grab just a tiny little bit, and then go over that mistake that we made. Apologies for bringing the model a bit too far down. My eyesight isn't as good as it used to be. Let's face it, was never good to begin with. But there we go. And I don't know if you can see this at all, but the brush tip itself, so it's the very, very tip, sort of curling. So if we use these, so it's sort of curling around a little bit. So that's something you need to be very careful of, because when we're putting a brush stroke, that little curl will change things on how it gets laid down, as well as the distance, and maybe it goes on to a little bit extra. But, you know, that's what it kind of does. So let's rinse that off. I'll just get rid of this. As you can see, I'm not too fussed by the fact that it's a cheap brush, or that, you know, it's part of the set. We're starting somewhere. Okay, so we have 2 of the 3 basic colours that we've got. The third basic colour is Thunderhawk Blue, and this is for the feet. So just here you can see for the feet and for the top of the weapons. Now, what's interesting is that this Wraithbone is a base coat, so base colour, and so is the Nagaroth Knight. However, the Thunderhawk Blue is a layer, so this means that it should be going on top of something, so there should be another colour underneath. Now, we also have Cortex White, which is a base coat, and then we have the contrast Magos Purple, and this is a technical. Now, I'm not too sure what technical means. I think it just means it's a bit more grittier, to be put down on the base. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the white down on the feet and the claws and on the gun, and then we're going to go over with some Thunderhawk Blue. Okay, so we're going to use a base, and then we're going to use a layer. So let's give this a shake. Now, I have another Cortex White in my selection. So this is an extra, so I can be as liberal as I like with it. So just to sort of clarify one small thing, I have my own hobby stuff, but for this we've purchased this beginner set specifically to go through. So here we go. We're going to grab a bit of white, and we are going to just pop it on the feet there. And that looks to be like it's part of a bit of scenery as well, so we'll need to come back to that in a second. But let's just pop this down. Nice bright white. And what you'll find is that your paints will react differently depending on how you thin them and how you base coat them, base coat the model. You know, the viscosity, pigmentation. And to be fair, you only ever really need 5 colours. You need your 3 primaries, a black and a white, because with that you can mix and get whatever colour you desire. Now obviously for ease we just purchase the colour, but if you wanted to expand into your own sort of style, it's always good to pick those up. And what we'll do in the future is we'll create something using just those 5 colours. We'll pick some nice pigmented colours and we will mix them together and just create our own little template. And we use like a little mixing tray, and I'll keep the prices for you as well, so you can see just how much it's going to actually cost to do this and how much we're going to use. But for a first video, it's alright, you know, this is what it's all about, getting started, as I keep saying. And it does not have to look good. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. It doesn't have to look good, because the quality improves with time and practice. You could practice for 100 hours, but if you don't know what you're practicing, well, the quality won't happen. But if you learn what to do and then practice, your quality will improve. There you go. I'll just pop that on there as well. Okay. You may notice that my hands also shake as well a little bit. And that's okay. So it doesn't matter if your hands shake, it doesn't matter if you're not very good, if you have poor hand-eye coordination. Okay, you can use parts of your hand to rest and sort of make things a little easier. So I use my pinky to sort of stabilize myself a little bit. And yeah, there we go. And I'm just going to go under his chin a little bit more, and just get under the chin there. Fabulous. Okay, so that looks like the parts that are going to be white. And while we're here, actually, so one of the parts of this is the teeth to be cortex white. So let's do the teeth. Okay, so he's got a nice toothy grin. We've got a little bit of paint on our brush, which is good. And all we're going to do is gently rub it over. Now you can see that some of the detail is getting taken away, but that's all right, because we can just fix that anyway. So there we go. Looks like he's brushed his teeth a little too much, and he's got toothpaste all over it. So there we go. And if you ever want to just take away a little bit of paint, you can just use a wet brush. So make sure you take off a lot of the water, and all you're going to do is just run it over. Now you can see that we thinned it down. Oh no, we've thinned it under it too much. Okay, well, all we're going to do now, take that off. We're going to dry our brush. So now we have a nice dry brush, and then we're just going to soak that off. And there we go. So just soak that right off. There we go. Pop that down, make sure I get this nice and dry. And again, look at that. So you're just going to soak it right off. Now it does look like he's brushed his teeth a little too much and he's got a bit foamy. Or you can say he's got rabies or something, Doesn't really matter too much. There you go. There you go, little fella. Okay, so we put the white down. Now we're going to put the Thunderhawk blue down. So give this a shake. Get rid of that. And I'm going to just take a tiny little bit, not a bit too much. And what you may notice as well, folks, is that you don't have to have a fantastic setup either. I'm literally just sitting at a dining room table, which I've commandeered, and okay, I've got bits and pieces, but you don't really need them, especially if you're doing this for the first time. If you do find that you like the hobby and you want to get into it a bit more, then by all means, splash out a little bit, treat yourself. Amazon has some great deals, get something really, really cheap, really easy. You don't need the fanciest of stuff, because let's face it, we're not going to be good to start with, and that's all right. But over time, if we practice and learn, we will get better and better. And that's what really matters, is learning what works and what doesn't work, learning how to steady the model properly, how to prime it, and how to paint it in a way that is suitable for you. Okay, that's the biggest thing, is this has to be suitable for you. There's no point picking up an airbrush if airbrushing isn't for you. You know, you spend like £400 or £500 on an airbrush. You could probably pick one up from Amazon for about 50-60 quid. It's not the best, it's not the worst. You know, it's an investment. If airbrushing interests you, then by all means, please pick something up. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can see that very well. I'm trying not to hide this from you. It's a downside to having one angle, and just sort of figuring this out as we go. Last little bit is on top here. You can see I've still got this little nubby bit from the plastic sprue that didn't take off, but you know what? It's a feature now. We are just going to include it as a feature. There you go. Now that's just on the tops, so we're just going to do that on the tops. And we're almost done with this. There you go. Fantastic. Oh, that looks great if I do say so myself. What do you think, guys, eh? Absolutely top tier painting. Okay, now the next part, well, we've done the teeth, is putting the Armageddon dust, which is the technical on the base coat, on the base, and then the contrast. Now that's going to be interesting. Let's do the contrast first, and we'll see how that changes things up. In fact, let's take a look at our little model side by side. As you can see, it looks exactly like the box art, if not better. I think, you know, it looks absolutely fantastic. So we are going to see what the contrast does. So give it a shake. Oh, it's I don't know if you can hear that. It's a lot thinner than all the other colours. It's very much thinner than all the other colours. There you go. I don't know if you can see that very well, folks, but it's very much liquid. Well, we're just going to fill in some of the little bits. So load it up on our brush, and well, we know these parts here, they need to be. It also comes off very, very quickly, a sort of puddly fashion. I guess that's the good. So this is also why we thin paints as well, because it allows it to just sort of creak into the crevices, and when it dries you get a nice gradient of shadow in the more darker places and a light sort of coat on top. Now this part here, we haven't actually painted this part, so we're just applying contrast directly to it. And you can sort of see how it picks up what's underneath it, and that kind of comes through. So if there's a white underneath there, it'll come through brighter. If there's a black, it'll come through darker. And that's what we'll look at in future episodes. So how it looks when we contrast paint things, how when we base coat them, you just generally learn all together. Now I don't know if the camera will pick it up very well, but there's some markings just here, so some skin markings, and we're going to just fill that in with the contrast, and that creates a nice little contrast between the surrounding area and adds a little bit of detail. And you'll find this all over the model in various places. So here on the weapon, for example. Just gonna pop that in there. And you know, don't worry about making mistakes, folks. It's our first attempt at learning. And then we'll get the other side. I realise my finger's probably putting a bit of shadow on that doesn't pick up very well. But you know what? For recording with a phone and... oh, there we go. See, the good thing about this is that you can just rub it off. So if you put too much on, you can just rub it off. And that's good. Means we can make less mistakes, but you know what? I keep saying it. It's alright if you make a mistake. That's how we learn. No one learns by being perfect. We always learn from our mistakes. Now, if you're repeatedly making the same mistake, maybe you're not learning, or maybe you're not recognizing what the mistake is. And that's always something that we need to think about. You know, there's the old saying, you know, if at first you don't succeed, try again. No, if at first you don't succeed, stop and figure out where you went wrong. That's how we learn. Because trying and trying again without knowing where you're going wrong always leads you to the same place. Failure. There we go. Okay, and what we'll also do is we're just going to pop in a little bit of colour on the eyes. And you notice, folks, I'm doing this with the same paintbrush that came in the box. I haven't changed my paintbrush at all. Just using the same paintbrush. So this is what I was saying earlier, with the way that tip kind of curls. As you can see, I've got it on his cheek here instead of his eyes because of the tip. So I'm going to have to rotate the brush and just try and get it in there a little bit better. There we go. It looks terrible, but that's all right. Very terrible indeed, but you know what? I think it's good. I think it's good. And I'll just fill these in. And on the other side, just gonna fill that in. And there. Okay. Oh, got a little bit. Just there we go. And that should be it. And I'll probably miss bits and pieces, but I'm just gonna add a little bit more to this actually. There you go. Fantastic. And we've got the side of the head as well that we can add to. And there we go. And then this side. Probably running out of contrast, but you know what, it doesn't matter. There we go. That's that. Okay, so we have used our Wraithbone, we have used our Cortex White, we have used our Mage's Purple, we have used our Nagaroth Knight, we have used our Thunderhawk Blue. And now to use the technical Armageddon Dust. And I'm guessing we just paint this straight onto the base. I've never used this, so let's give it a shake. See if it does anything for it. And then let's just pop the lid. Ooh, okay. That's different. It's kind of looks like a bit of grit, a bit of dirt mixed in with the paint. Well, let's figure this out. So we'll just take some on the brush. Okay, so we've got a little bit, and I'm going to place it on like so. Okay, so it seems that this is to be smeared on, I guess. So what we'll do is we'll use the other end of our brush take a little dollop and pop it on. There we go, get that on there. It looks terrible, but you know what? It is what it is. And then we'll use our brush end to just sort of push it down and spread it around. That probably looks a little better actually. Again folks, sorry if the angle kind of cuts off a little bit from what you can see, what you can't see. Also one of the habits of having to look down on it from a certain angle as well. Maybe I'll get something over the shoulder. That might be a little bit better for everyone, myself included. And we'll switch between angles. But, you know, we'll wait for life to happen first, because, you know, this is just a hobby. Okay, so this seems to be going down rather well. Oh, got a bit on him. That's alright. And then here we go. Almost finishing up. And that's that. Okay, and that is that folks. All done. Let's compare. Box art, our art. How good does that look? Ours looks clearly better. Well folks, thanks very much for tuning in. Catch you on the next episode, and we'll just get started, eh?